You could be the bravest, strongest person in the world, and behind closed doors, you just break down completely. The post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of people don't tend to understand it at all, because they see a war film and they think it's great and it's all glory, but actually we're all human at the end of the day, and we've all got a breaking point. It was February 2012. We'd just taken off from a forward operating base, and we couldn't have gone no higher than about 20 foot, if not a little bit higher, and then suddenly 3 rockets came streaming up into the air, and it was darkness as well, so you can probably imagine, it's like all your worst nightmares come true in one hit. The injuries themselves, it's more of a catalogue of injuries, and over time, the one that stood out the most, not so much the physical injuries, it was more the mental health injuries. And as you get over one hurdle, the next hurdle suddenly appears. The biggest hurdle of all was getting through the mental health side of things. Once I returned home, you have a massive guilt hanging over you. You start beating yourself up where you think you should have done something a bit more, but it's out of your control. Over time, the guilt really does build up, and it breaks you as a person, and suddenly you lose all touch with reality in a way. I say to people, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde scenario. One day you'll be absolutely fine, and the next day you can wake up and you can be a complete monster. The classic moment is when I suddenly realised I didn't have my house anymore, my long-term partner, and I spent a year to 14 months sleeping on an airbed because, no fault of myself, I was being punished for an injury I had no control over. Having to put your hand up and say, I need help, that was the biggest shock, because mental health and the whole stigma behind it, no one wants to put their hand up and admit to it. But it come to a crunch point where I really had to do something urgently, because otherwise I wouldn't be sat here now. Turning my life around was probably like learning to walk again. I knew I had to go through treatment. The treatment wasn't going to be an easy process, and one of the things I soon identified really quickly was there's no cure for what I suffer with, so it has to be managed. Waterloo Uncovered to me is really important, because one of the things that's always brought me back to where I started from was history. It gives me the opportunity to study warfare from 1815. It's understanding warfare throughout times and how the impact it has on people, but the only thing that changes is the technology, not the human. Soldiers are pretty much like the everyday soldier today, exactly the same warfare in a way, but different equipment, and you're up against the odds. Nothing can prepare you to fight in any war situation. You can have all the training in the world, but it's how you mentally it can affect you. The buzz I get for being in a trench and finding something, it gives you an adrenaline boost. It's something that's been shot 200 years ago has not been seen in the daylight since. It's like you're the first person in human history in 200 years to find it. It gives you an uplift. Being here and being around people has really identified the fact that I can help people or educate people to understand my suffering, so they can take it away and learn from it. They can go home and identify it within their loved ones or family. And I think it's really important that people do identify the fact that post-traumatic stress disorder is actually an injury and not just a disease.